All right, what is up, 511 Media family? I am here with the fabulous, wonderful next Lieutenant Governor of California, Miss Gloria Romero. Gloria, it is awesome. It is a privilege, honestly, truly, sincerely, to have you in recording with us.
Well, thank you. It's a great joy to be able to be here this morning, kick off my week, start my Monday morning talking with you and your listeners. So thank you so much for the invitation.
Of course, of course. So let's get into it a little bit. I know you've been campaigning with the wonderful Mr. Steve Hilton on the Golden Ticket, Michael Gates. Both of those guys have actually been here live in studio with me. Love everything y'all are doing together. And you know, you got a little bit of a unique, interesting twist because I know you're a former Democrat, right? So you kind of switch parties. We probably want to talk about that a little bit. But tell me so far, how has the campaign been going? We're 4 months away, just under 4 months away from November midterms. We've got some things shaken up on the national level. We just had Lindsey Graham pass just the other day, sadly, which is going to be a huge, have huge implications on the national level. But California is where we're focused. 511's focused. I know it's where you're focused. So. How has everything been going with your campaign?
Well, first, let me just say that I'm very happy to be Steve Hilton's running mate on the Golden Ticket. He's governor. I'm running for lieutenant governor. And the outcome of the election was just certified on Friday by the Secretary of State. Mind you, it took 5 weeks for them to finalize the vote count. That's a whole other issue that has got to be resolved so we don't wait this long.
Well, it took them a while to make up their mind. They had to decide what they wanted it to look like, right?
Yeah, kind of figure out how many more ballots might be needed. We'll see. But it is now certified, so I am officially in the top two, the runoff for the general election. And I'm very pleased with those numbers. I invite anyone to go to the Secretary of State's website. You can pull out all the numbers, take a look at the statistics. But if you look at the numbers on the lieutenant governor race, I am clearly within immediate striking distance of the top vote getter, a career politician who's been there forever. I'm only about 1.5 points behind. That translates to about 110,000 votes. The exciting thing about that is that she had millions in her campaign coffers. I had pennies in my campaign coffers, and yet I was still able to basically become a David in this race against a Goliath, one of the status quo politicians of California. So it gives me an opportunity now in the next few months to basically scramble, realign the base, reach out to other voters who didn't vote for me in the first round, but to build up, to look for those additional votes. And when you're only 1.5 points separating you from the other candidate, that's a good place to be. So I'm very happy about it, excited for the runoff. We were in Oakland, Steve Hilton and I were in Oakland for a town hall on Saturday. And a lot of people asked us, why are you in Oakland? It is a traditionally blue, very Democrat progressive city. But our answer is always, this is California. Oakland, Alameda County is a very important part of the state. And we are going to go because we believe that in reality, even though we are Republicans, whoever you are, independents, Republicans, there are many Democrats who are disaffected and want to vote a different way, want a different outcome. So we are traveling the state, blue, red. I believe it's a golden state.
Yeah. So, big question, I think, for me and probably many people. I'm sure you've answered it many, many times. As a former Democrat, when did you switch parties? What made you switch parties? And let's kind of talk about that, because what I really want to do, Gloria, is talk to you, ask the questions that I think a lot of the viewers are going to be asking, and those are going to be some of the same questions that I'm going to want to know personally. So,
okay, wonderful. I was a Democrat. I was the majority leader of the California State Senate. I was a Democrat who really was raised with the ideology, the belief of a Democrat Party under the era of John F. Kennedy. So I was really one of the Kennedy Democrats, remember, my generation and what we grew up with and what I espoused was really an era of American exceptionalism
Right.
that
And
we
most of those guys are Republican now, right?
Exactly, exactly. I mean, and so this was really the era in which I grew. Remember, our adage was, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." So
Right.
that was really what drove me into public service. It was the belief that America is a great nation. You know, we stood down the Cuban Missile Crisis. We went to the moon. We lifted ourselves up by our own bootstraps. And so this was really the era. Fast forward, those days are gone. Today, it's the era of a Democrat Party that's been overtaken by the socialists, the communists, whether it's New York or Chicago or, you know, here in Los Angeles, where I am today. And so it's one that I've seen even when I was a Democrat. And for years, I was one of those Democrats who took on, for all the years that I served in the legislature, I took on my own party over school choice. You know, my mother had a sixth grade level of education. I have a PhD. I understand the power of education. And by the way, education is almost half the entire very bloated state budget. So if we don't fix education today, where some 80% of especially minority children are not reading or doing math at basic levels of proficiency, we don't have a workforce. How do we get to the moon, to Mars in the future, where Elon Musk wants to take us? And by the way, he used to be a Democrat as well. So was Tulsi Gabbard. So was Leo Terrell. So was Bobby Kennedy. And so all of these things factored in. When I served in Sacramento, I was considered to be an honorary Republican. I really believed that I could change the party, that we could bring it around. It was the majority party, but I worked willingly across the aisle with Republican when we had independent, and then Democrat legislators to move reforms forward. After I left the legislature, I continued to work on education reform, and finally decided to leave the party, especially when I saw so much of the wokeism. They couldn't tell me what a woman was. You know, I'm not a birthing person. I am a proud mother.
Yeah.
We saw in the name of climate change, they're trying to take away our plastic bags, our straws. Now they're trying to get our gas stoves. I ask, as a Latina, you can't toast a tortilla in a microwave or an electric range. You need a gas stove. And it does nothing for climate change. But finally, the real final blow was when, despite even having a flawed candidate in Joe Biden, the Democrat Party basically kicked him out. I mean, that's a Latin America banana republic style mode, to basically say, we don't like that candidate, we're throwing him out. And then they installed somebody who I think was worse than Joe Biden, quite frankly.
Yeah.
No vote, no delegate. They put him in. And then they said it was a one-time thing. But look what's happened now in Maine. This is essentially a very dangerous pattern and practice now being implemented by the party of democracy, the Democrat Party, to simply say, we don't like who the voters selected. We, the elders, the oligarchs of the party, are now choosing for you. This is Animal Farm wrapped up, amazingly. And this is the Democrat Party today. So I walked away. As Ronald Reagan said, I didn't leave the party left me. It was no longer the JFK. And when Bobby Kennedy, the current Bobby Kennedy, who's now the Secretary of Health and Human Services, walked away, that was the end of a Kennedy icon. That was the end of the legend of the Democrats. And I said, time to go.
Yeah, and you know, I've usually had over the years a pretty good instinct, pretty good gut for things. You know, I tend to be able to kind of tell which way the wind is blowing. So we'll see. For what that's worth, I'm watching as the Democrat Party becomes more and more radicalized, becomes essentially the DSA party is what they're becoming. I think you're going to see more and more Gloria Romero's emerge, whether that's on you know, an elected official or whether that's just the everyday average person that says, you know what, maybe I'm not for, I may not necessarily like Trump. I'm not speaking as myself now. I do, for those of you watching that are questioning that. But I may not necessarily like Trump. I may not like some of the border policies and this and that. But the left has become so radicalized that I just can't stand it anymore. And I have to leave. I have to stand up and say something, because my convictions of, I don't want my children, butchered. I don't want my children, my girls scared because they can't go in a locker room or they can't go in a bathroom in a public school because they're afraid some boy might do something, that's unspeakable on this show. I don't want to go into a world where, all of these radical things are being institutionalized. And so for those reasons, I'm going to leave and I'm going to step out. And if nothing else, maybe I may not become a Republican, but maybe I may become an independent, or maybe I may choose no party preference or whatever. But I see things that are going to continue to change, because I see the trajectory that the left is on. I see the trajectory the Democrats are on. And I don't think that train's slowing down anytime soon.
You're exactly right. And when I tell people, to use that old famous phrase, I tell people, hey, if you like your party, you can keep your party, but vote differently. We have had 16 years of one party monopoly rule in Sacramento. And this is after I left Sacramento. And that old adage as well is basically the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting something to change, but it doesn't. So this year, this is the best year to make a change, to send a message, to really enact something real. And that is, if you want to keep your party, fine, but vote differently. Give us a chance. That famous phrase also, what do you have to lose? California is number one in poverty, number one in homelessness. We are now associated with the phrase, fraud, waste, and abuse. We have a bullet train going to nowhere in the name of climate change. Between Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, they burned down half the state of California, and no rebuilding that's taking place. They will not implement Proposition 36, which the voters overwhelmingly voted. And so we look at it over and over and over. Our waters are poisoned, our beaches. This is amazing. For the 4th of July, the state and officials put out a warning from the Mexican border all the way up to Malibu. Okay, prime coastal land. And by the way, as Lieutenant Governor, I would serve on the Coastal Commission, so it's very important for me. But think about it, it's 4th of July. Remember that old movie Jaws, dun, 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 don't go into the water. The environmental committees put out a warning, don't go into the water, not because of Jaws and sharks circling the Southland, but because of sewage spillage in the Mexican harbor, the Mexican San Diego harbor, to all the way up homelessness, fentanyl needles going into the water. Basically, they have discovered flesh-eating bacteria in the water at dangerous levels, to the point that they put this out, don't go into the water. And yet we saw lots of little kids, working families. It's the 4th of July. You go to celebrate America's birthday. Kids are in the water. They are in bacteria infested, flesh-eating waters. And where is the state of California? So all of those issues. So I urge people, if you're happy with that, and nobody is happy with it, because the change numbers we see are over 55%, hovering even close to 60%. We want change in California. California has gone off the rails. So this time I'm urging people, let's unite. We're not a red state. We're not a blue state. We're the golden state. Let's work together, get past ideology, park the partisan politics, vote sensibly, vote different. I believe vote Hilton, vote Romero, and we will see a real change in California.
So what years did you serve in the Senate, and what was your district?
I served, in the entire legislature from 98 to 2010. In the Senate from 2001 to 2010. At that time, my district was number 24. It included parts of Los Angeles, East LA, and a good part of the San Gabriel Valley. So largely the east side of Los Angeles, LA County.
Gotcha. And let's talk about your voting record, because that was a different time in California. The last Since that time, things have just kind of gone off a cliff. There was some at least some common sense in those years, right? And
Right.
that was very formative years for myself. That was 98 to 2010 was kind of the formative years of my life, early 20s. Well, let's talk about the voting record, because I think it's important that people hear from you. If you're a former Democrat, now Republican, how can I trust you?
Well, can you trust Donald Trump? Can you trust Elon Musk? Can you trust Leo Terrell? Can you trust Tulsi Gabbard? Did you trust Ronald Reagan himself? We were all former Democrats. And again, too, I think that a majority state, it's not surprising overall. I will say as well that I think we've seen very different political machines in California. And what I've seen overall is that I'm hoping to help build and strengthen the Republican Party. When I met Donald Trump, and I had the honor of speaking at the only rally he had in California, it was in Coachella. When I met him, he did not pull out a 15-point plank and ask, how'd you vote this way? How'd you do this? How'd you do this? You know what he said? He said, welcome to the Republican Party. If we're ever going to grow the Republican Party, we are going to recognize and bring in independents, disaffected Democrats, strengthen the base, because people are walking away from the Democrat Party largely on issues of faith, of family, of freedom, of understanding that one party monopoly rule, it's broken. And so on the campaign trail, I was often asked this. If you look at the most important, really the major reason for what I'm known, it's really that I was a Democrat who stood up to my own party on the biggest issue of the day, I believe of the decade, I still believe today, and that is the caliber, the quality of education in California. I was in the Kennedy tradition, school choice, vouchers, opportunity scholarships. You cannot believe the battle that I faced on that era, because the most powerful political force in California today, it's not the oil companies, it's not the pharmaceutical companies, it's actually the teachers union. Yeah. That is the most powerful political force. It's got the biggest war chest. People are surprised to hear that. And basically, that's why we continue to see failing, broken schools where we find upwards, half of our kids cannot read at basic levels of proficiency. In Oakland, when Steve and I were there on Saturday at a town hall for the Golden Ticket, it's closer to 80% of kids not reading at basic levels or doing basic math. This week, tomorrow, I'm going to join over 1,000 professors at the University of California. They have finally, and I give them every applaud available to them, they are standing up to the UC regents and saying, look, you got to reinstate the SAT or the ACT, some standardized metric for college admissions, because these are the professors at a very prestigious university system known around the world. And the professors are saying, we can't even do our classes anymore because the kids are coming in very low and we have to basically dumb down our curriculum. They can't do math. They're walking in without algebra. And so I look at this and I think the UC system, the Democrats in charge, have basically tried to get rid of academic standardized testing, thinking that it'll be inclusive. That's just the soft bigotry of low expectations. It doesn't help the kid. It doesn't help the university. It doesn't help the employer when they get out with a meaningless degree in which they still can't read. And so everybody's in a bit of a like, what do we do? So I'm going to participate, as will Steve Hilton, this week with the UC Regents, calling on them to say, let's change the standard, bring back the testing, and then you got to focus on K through 12 and fix that system. That's what I did. That's most of my voting record. I also voted as a Democrat for sunshine in government. Very much believe that. I think it's important for the people to always know what's happening in government and to make sure that we shine the light. where there is corruption. I, helped to form public integrity units, reform, really advocating for the Brown Act, public information. I did oversee some of the penal system in California. At that time in California, we were dealing with a very horrific, concentration. I mean, a prison system that was busting at the seams. There was a federal receivership that was threatening to take over the prison system. So I worked with the then Republican governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to figure out, what do we do so the prison system doesn't erupt? How do we begin to take a look at reasonable, sensible reforms in the system and to get on a new path? Because 90% of inmates do parole out. And the question becomes, what condition do you want them to come out as? Later, as we saw just recently, the voters voted for Proposition 36. And yet today, the governor refuses to implement that. So there's a lot of, I think, connections. There's areas of disagreement. But I think that it's important. The most important thing is to look at the transition. I tell people that I did not transition to become a Republican. I'm a little bit more faithful. I say I converted to become a Republican. And it wasn't just walking away from the Democrats. It was walking towards not the same Republican Party, but I saw a more energized Republican Party, because the Republican Party has gone through transformation as well. And I was inspired by an America First movement that didn't always exist. Like if it were a Romney or a McCain, or dare I say even a George Bush, I might not have left to become a Republican. But I was inspired by the America First Trump-led movement. And when I left the Democrat Party, I joined the Republican Party and immediately endorsed Trump.
Well, that's awesome. I got to tell you, I've already voted for you in the primary.
Yay!
I will continue to do so. But I definitely love the fact that you're so important, so driven by education. As a homeschool dad, a homeschool family, school choice is very important to us. There's some other things which I'm not going to share right now, but you're kind of speaking some things that I need to hear right now also. Would you mind if I ask you about your faith?
Sure. I'm Catholic.
Okay. So how important is that in your daily life, the Catholic tradition?
Well, I read the Bible every day. We've served in the church. The Catholic Church as well has gone through major transformations as well. We have a new pope. A lot of people I'm excited that it's an American pope from Chicago, baseball loving as well. Although sometimes I don't necessarily agree with the pope and some of his statements on, for example, immigration. The Vatican has a very big wall. I have been to the Vatican. I think that it's important for us to think about, borders exist for a reason. And I do believe in the humanity. I mean, if you read the Old Testament in particular, Exodus, foreigners, going through the desert, there's a lot of discussion about actually migration, especially in the Old Testament. And I love the stories and what we learn from Scripture. But there is an understanding that in today's world, we've got to make sure that we have reasonable borders. And I believe in it. Citizenship matters to me. So I'm not in exact agreement with the Pope on that. We saw as well many of the scandals of the abuse of children in the Catholic Church. And that's not unique to the Catholic Church, but it really did shake many of us, our faith, and really thinking about a horrendous time. There's always the concern over abortion, for example. I am not that, what's the guy's name from Texas, the Tallarico or whatever. I am nowhere that. I do look at this and think, both for Steve and I, we recognize that the Supreme Court has opined on this. It's basically left it up to the states, the decision. California, it's in the Constitution. Overwhelmingly, Californians have instituted abortion as a procedure, which can be included in California. But as governor, we can in the new administration work to not fund Planned Parenthood, for example. And I think too, to make it proactive, to not deal with it after the fact, but try to provide prevention, to really work with kids and provide alternatives and opportunities. To me as well, I think fatherhood matters, responsibility matters. And so reaching out to young, and not only young people, but across the board as well, to think about what the responsibilities are. So there's a lot that we can do. And I think that's going to be the pathway forward. You know, the state of Florida under Governor DeSantis, they did an abortion bill that I believe is 6 weeks. I think it's called the Heartbeat Bill. California, I do not agree with where it's sort of silent in the language, but there's an interpretation that California's law is that it can go to the point of birth, to basically infanticide. That to me is just wrong. But it's probably going to take some iteration, some change, some winning of additional elections to ever get that to change, to not have it as extreme, because to me that is absolutely wrong. But the Supreme Court left it up to the states. That's what California has today.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, so far, Gloria, I liked you before. I like you even more now. Let's talk a little bit about what the job of the lieutenant governor is, because I think a lot of people think that, that's just kind of like you're sitting there waiting for something to happen to the governor and you don't do anything.
Exactly. Well, most people, when I go to the town halls, because I was a former professor, I always ask the question, who knows who is the current lieutenant governor? Nobody knows. Or maybe you get a couple of hands kind of half shoot up, right? Nobody knows who is the lieutenant governor. So I often joke and I call it the Seinfeld of state government, because nobody knows who it is. And it's sort of a joke. Like you just sort of wait to see, is the governor alive today? Well, Steve Hilton is in great health. I'll just make sure he takes his vitamins. We'll be fine. So what does the lieutenant governor do? A lot. Number one, you're the president of the Senate. And many lieutenant governors, including the current one, they treat it as a ceremonial thing. Not me. I'm not into ceremonies. The president of the Senate, I used to work the Senate. I know the rules. This is where, think about it, whenever you have all these all these commissions and boards, they get populated because they're nominated mostly by the governor, and then they go for confirmation. Who does the confirmation? It's the Senate. I'm the president of the Senate. I used to serve on the Rules Committee. I know the procedures. Day one, I'm going to sit down with all 40 senators in California, because once you finish campaigning, you start governing. And whether we like it or not, these are the people these are the representatives the people sent to make decisions. We work with them. And so I'm going to talk with all of the 40 senators right away about, these are the nominations. We want to move forth expeditiously, not invite lawfare. But that's critical. And that also involves relationships, to talk to people, to be able to articulate why these candidates are so important and moving the nominations forward. That's a major thing. I mentioned as well, too, the lieutenant governor serves on every board of higher education in California. I've been a professor in all three systems, a student in all three systems. It's my passion. My mother had a high school, a sixth grade education, never went to high school. I have a PhD. That's why it's so passionate, because she really taught me that education, it's the key to the American dream. It's what lifts you out of poverty. And so I fight for that, and for so many other mothers and dads today who may be in similar situations as was my family. So that's important. And we're going to deal with all kinds of issues in the university system. And then, of course, too, the lieutenant governor serves on so many boards and commissions. The lieutenant governor writes a California economic plan. And I don't think this current lieutenant governor has even written one. I don't think the last lieutenant governor has written one. I intend to write one that will highlight support for small businesses, lowering taxes, lowering the cost of energy, especially our gas prices. We can do so much. And then we're going to look at all the boards and commissions. The Coastal Commission. There are many boards and commissions that have really overstepped their original, sort of why they were created. They need to be reviewed. And if they are redundant or not needed, get rid of them, because these just become parking spaces for the donors, usually, of of the governor. And so we want to streamline Doge government. So these are just some of the ideas that can be done, some of the responsibilities. I can lead, create trade missions, import export business is very important, especially in the agricultural world. But there's so much that can be done. I intend to be an active lieutenant governor. And by the way, did you know that whenever the governor is out of state, I would be the acting governor? So think about it. Gavin Newsom was out running around the country this last weekend. Had I been lieutenant governor today, I would have right away signed an executive order giving no taxes on tips. Gavin Newsom refuses to implement that in California, and I would investigate his diaper gate. Where did that money go? Why is it flowing to the best friend of his wife, her nonprofit? Who's really collecting the money? And why is California in the business of diapers anyway? I mean, it's crazy. So much fraud and potential abuse, we think.
Right. Why has all of this fraud and waste and abuse, not just abuse of finances, but frankly, abuse of the citizens, why has it been allowed to go unchecked as long as it has?
You know, that's the $1 million question. And the state of California is not alone, but we've become synonymous with it. You know, how did we lose $24 billion when it comes to like a high-speed train to nowhere? Not one piece of rail has been laid. And the latest projections are it's going to cost something like $240 billion to finally build. It's stop. You know, ya basta, enough. Pull the plug on that. It's never going to get done. You know, the unemployment scam, the 911 system that failed before anything even got launched. We saw Nick Shirley. He didn't do the Leering centers in California, but he certainly looked at the home hospice centers and found there's so much waste, fraud, and abuse. So you have to look at it and wonder, is it set up to fail? And I think it is. Yeah. I think the system is set up to basically money pours out, because you can't lose $24 billion in the construction of a high-speed rail in which not one foot of rail has been built. So it's going to consultants, it's going to the NGOs, to the nonprofits, and then you have to follow the money from there. So thankfully,
back into the campaigns.
Exactly. And Bill Saley, who is the U.S. District Attorney in the Central Valley. Yes, he's investigating. We need to have, and that's why, again, too, we need an attorney general who will actually do this as well, a governor who will lead it as well, and a lieutenant governor who will highlight this in looking at special, looking at each board and commission. Where is this money going? They don't ask. And if you don't ask, we never get an answer. But clearly, if it's, and some of it may be legal, but even when it's legal, it's waste, and we need to eliminate it. So remember,
legalized crime, anything's legal, right?
Exactly. So we want to make sure that we are, that's why we take it. There's waste, there's fraud, there's abuse, and we've got to tackle all three to have some sensibility back in California. Otherwise, we're doing the same thing over and over. The people of California are being ripped off. And what's happening then is the quality of life, the affordability of life, it's gotten so excessive that people sadly aren't voting there, but they are voting with their feet, and they're going to other places. They're going out of state. We are asking the voters, give us a chance, give California a chance. Let's vote differently. Let's vote with our ballots rather than our feet leaving California. And if we begin to do so, especially this year, we can make California golden again. There's no reason why we can't.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Gloria, I know you're going to be in the Central Valley very, very soon.
Yes.
You have an event coming up, right?
I do. July 20th. It's going to be at the Casino One club in Fresno.
Yep.
Yes. And so the website is gloriajromero.com, gloriajromero.com. It's to support me. Special guests include Steve Hilton running for governor and the fabulous entertainer Paul Rodriguez. So we're so excited about that. It'll be a night of learning about what we're doing, but a night of fun. So we invite you, come join us, purchase your ticket, very reasonable, and you will be supporting a strong, Hilton Romero team going to begin to change the California needs.
And we can find out about that event on your website?
GloriaJRomero.com is the website. The link is there. There's a QR code. Go join us, spread the word, and we invite one and all.
And if you're watching this, you can also message me, and I have the flyer for it also. So anytime soon that you'll be in Bakersfield at all?
We're working on coming up, but I don't have anything immediately on the agenda right now.
Okay, awesome. You have to let me know when you're going to be here. We can help promote, and be awesome to actually get you live in studio too.
Okay, we'll look forward to that. We'll plan something real soon.
Cool, awesome. Well, thank you, Gloria, for being here. Thank you guys for watching, and have a great day, and God bless.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you. God bless you.